Ben, probably your party might not like this news. The Democratic Party might not like this news, but it seems like President Donald Trump has approved the release of the classified memo compiled by the House Intelligence Committee. And the memo compiled by the House Republicans on the Intelligence Committee, clearing the way for its release tomorrow, which is Friday. Will it shake the political world upside down? Did the Obama administration really did wiretap Donald Trump? And will the FISA memo stop the Robert Mueller special counsel investigation? And California governor race is also heating up. The so-called big three are slugging it out, but only two can survive for the general election. Who's going to make it and who's not? And of course, we will analyze the president's State of the Union speech as well. I'm Michael Wan, your host for Michael Wan's Op-Ed Live, and this is Ben Pak, who is also having his own election coming up in June 5th, and hopefully who also make it to the top two and continue to run until November. So let's talk about the State of the Union first. Did Donald Trump impress you? Was it great? Was it flat? What's your take on it?
Well, the first thing that I noticed is that he was very eloquent, which, you know, publicly, he does not have a wide range of vocabulary, so I know that somebody wrote it for him. I thought it was divisive, and he did address some of the issues that everybody was wondering what he would say, but I thought he missed a lot of it as well.
I don't see it that way. I think Donald Trump is probably one of the best effective communicators in my lifetime. I mean, that's why I think he was an outsider, but 1.5 years, he was a businessman. He became, the top politician in the world, and I think he has a. People say his vocabulary skills, sometimes he does use some, college level terms too, but I think it's just a mainstream media trying to portray him like a buffoon. He knows what he's talking about, and I think he's a very effective communicator. You heard about that cartoonist, was it his name Adam Scott, who drew Dilbert? He even said, he's never seen a guy as persuasive as Donald Trump. I completely agree with him. I think he has probably one of the best persuasive skills that I've seen. I'm going to be honest with you, And as a former supporter for Obama, I think he's even a better speaker than Obama. That's my opinion, because I think he has a tremendous, he's very good off the cuff. When you go to his rallies, I've never been to his rallies, but when you watch it on YouTube, he goes off like 1.5 hours without any prompter or speech written for him. So I think if you do a speech like that, it kind of reaches other people's heart. I think that's how he gained traction, and that's how he won the Rust Belt, because it resonated among them. So I think he's good at that, and he also showed that he can be he can give at least more of a politically correct speech during State of the Union speeches. And did you check out his speech in South Korea? You should check that one out.
No, I did not.
It was a very impressive speech. South Koreans were all giving him good reviews on that. I think it was like a 45-minute speech. It was probably one of his best written speeches, I would say,
Okay.
And I think you should check that out. And many analysts did kind of say probably Donald Trump, I think it was Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump might copy that attitude for this State of the Union. I think the tone was a little bit, it was similar to a degree, but I think it was a little bit more entertaining in South Korea. I think you should definitely check that out. And State of the Union, I thought he purposely tried to, make it a little bit, more monotone, not to be, I didn't see it too divisive, some people said that when he mentioned MS-13, that it was divisive, that he was, comparing MS-13 to the Dreamers, but I didn't feel that way, and I thought, he hit all the notes about the economy, how it improved during his administration, which I give him credit for. I don't give that credit to Obama, that, and I don't think Obama did anything really that great about, in the economy first, except for his first year, I would say, when it recovered after the Bush
administration. And that's what we're here to have a live discussion, correct?
Yeah, correct. And I would say, when he mentioned about, North Korea, he brought out that guy who was, who got cut off his legs. I think, Ji Sung-ho. He lost his leg, I think it was a very good, it was a kind of an, a good move on his team's part, to bring him there to criticize North Korea.
It was kind of gimmicky.
I mean, you can see it that way too, but
when Trump has to sell something, because he's a natural salesman, I think he's good. So without looking at or watching the speech that he gave to Korea, I think when he's on that mode or sort of like a television personality, he can deliver. At the same time, I thought it was calculated. I thought one of the things that I noticed is that I don't think I've ever seen a president in the past self-applauding himself whenever he would make a statement. I thought that was a little bit...
I didn't feel like he was applauding himself. I thought he was applauding the situation getting better. When he's talking about the economy getting better, the economy getting better and clapping that. If he really did that, then it's kind of, awkward. But I didn't see it in that sense, probably because...
Once again, depending on the point of view, but I did kind of see many instances, and I thought that was different. And maybe you're correct, but the way I saw it is that I had not seen somebody who kind of did that before. So that was kind of odd for me to see.
What did you feel about the Democrats sitting on their hands? I mean, I thought it was, uncalled for, but how do you take it?
Let's be honest. He's still the president of the United States, whether you like him or not. I think if you're in that room, this is the United States. You are free to express yourself. But at the same time, I think respect has to be given to the office itself. So there are certain places when I did not listen the beginning of it, so I had to kind of go back home and then listen to it later on.
It was a very long speech.
But I do have to say, there were parts that probably I would have not applauded, but at the same time, maybe due to the upbringing, I wouldn't have not booed. Just kind of like a silence would be my way of protesting.
What I didn't understand was when Donald Trump kind of mentioned that, African Americans, their unemployment rate is lowest ever in the United States history. Then I think the Black Caucus should have, stood up and, clapped, or at least clapped for it, but they didn't. It's like, I don't care what you say.
There's no argument to that. I think all the numbers support that fact. And if that's the case, you do have to kind of give credit where credit is due. And so, I don't disagree with that particular observation that you have regarding that situation. Yes.
So I felt, even when he was talking about, the 4 pillars about the immigration policy, the first one he said he would give 1.8 million pathway to citizenship between 10 to 12 years, time limit, right? And I think that was 1.8 million is what, like 3 times more than what Obama,
so far, yes.
Right? Obama said. So I think that is a plus for Democrats. I think at least, there's 4 pillars, right? Then at least on the first pillar, they should stand up and, clap their hands because they like that. But it seems like, I don't think it was even good for the Democrats, I mean, probably some dreamers who are watching that are saying, how come you're not at least, clapping on that first pillar?
It's not about clapping. I think it's all about whether the State of the Union is delivering what he's done in the first year and then what he's going to do in the next 3 years as the president. So whether it's clapping or not, I mean, whether people agree, I think they were there already with a mindset and because they already know what's coming ahead and they already knew that it wasn't only just the first pillar, but the message itself, in my opinion, was kind of divisive and very calculated, self-promoting, as well as sort of almost like an infomercial.
Okay, but you say divisive, right? But the polls right after, they did a flash poll. CNN is not a friend of Donald Trump. We all know that, right? And they had a flash poll, and it said 70% of the respondents said it was a good speech. And CBS also did a poll right after the State of the Union, and 75% said it was good. Not just that. The bigger number is among Democrats, 43% said it was a good speech. So I think it wasn't a divisive speech. I thought it was more of a unifying speech, but seems like your take is different.
I mean, that's why, don't you love this country? You and I are good friends, right?
We are.
And we can talk about this and we have different points of view. And I think that's what we can give our viewers, two polarizing views. So you kind of have an informed audience about how people feel.
Okay. There was a recent poll, also another one, that Donald Trump, people are saying his poll numbers are the lowest among U.S. president history, right? The first year, like 30-something%, but Rasmussen poll always had him around like 40 to 45, but it's all different, all the polls are different. But recently, his poll numbers has been gaining, even on the mainstream polls. I'm talking about, the CNN polls or, other, AP polls or YouGov poll. And there was a recent one yesterday that came out that it was 42%, 10% point. He was 32 last month, but now 42 for this month. What is your take on that? Is it a temporary thing, or why is it? Well, anyway, why is it going up now?
Polls, depending when you do it,
yeah,
and where you do it, I think can have a margin of error bigger than what they say. The fact is that the majority of the United States, whether it's 33% or 43%, is still below 50%. And that is factually one of the lowest.
Okay.
And because she gave an eloquent speech, and then depending how they ask on the poll, they may say, yes, the speech was good on that sense as a speech. But the contents of it, if they were to drill down, I don't know how people respond. I think polls can be sort of manipulated for people to get the results they want.
That was actually my next question. Do you think we should believe polls?
To a certain degree, but you have to really, I think polls, they have to give you the size of the poll, like where it was done, and then when it was done. Because if you just hear something about negative about a group of people, and then you do a poll right after, then negativity is going to outweigh the positives.
Yeah.
So I think it's a gauge, but not something that we should be using like 33.2%, 42.6%. I think there is a margin of error.
I think polls can be very correct, like you said, and sometimes it can be very wrong. For instance, 2016, they were very wrong, dead wrong, right? All over the world, all over the United States, right? Because only Business Investor Daily had it correct, and LA Times, surprisingly. LA Times Daily Tracking Poll also predicted that Trump would win. So those two polls were the most correct. All of the other polls were all wrong, right? You agree? Because people were afraid to say they support Donald Trump. Somehow it's a what do you say? It's kind of like a, coming out thing, So people felt afraid that they supported Trump, right? So I think that's why it was different. But the last Alabama election, you mentioned it, last time. The Republicans lost. I thought that Roy Moore had a chance. I thought he might win because it's such a Republican, oriented state. But the poll numbers kept saying that Doug Jones, the Democratic candidate, now he's a senator of Alabama, that he was always ahead. So it was correct. That poll number was correct. So it's very difficult. I think situation matters. What kind of company the poll company you got to check that out. And sometimes they have the symmetric system a little bit different. They sometimes sample more Democrats in there, sometimes more Republicans in there.
Remember,
those things happen, right?
The sample size, I think, is a big factor.
Yeah.
And then how it's done too. Whether they do it by phone or they do it. And I think you're correct to also say that sometimes people don't want to answer the wrong answer. Therefore, they'll say something that even they don't believe.
Yeah. Exactly.
So during 2016. I think you're correct. People, at least behind closed door, they were supportive of Donald Trump, but publicly or even Facebook, they were, bashing him. But when they went to the poll and then secretly they checked on Donald Trump. So, those things do happen, and I think the advent of social media is changing a lot of that as well. And people who are courageous to put things on social media also realize that there are repercussions. So I think that's why there's a lot of people who don't really want to say what they feel.
So at least I would say State of the Union speech, it was a plus for the president and the Republicans, at least momentarily. But this good mood has been changed the next morning. There was an accident, the train accident, that Republicans, congressmen and senators were there, and their families and their deputies. And they were in this accident, and it seems like one congressman was hospitalized because of possible concussion, and the driver died, because the train hit the dump truck. And I think, they were supposed to have this 3-day retreat in West Virginia. I think they did continue to do that. They're in that retreat place in West Virginia. But some people said that was God, on the left, that it was God acting, and giving them some kind of punishment. I think those kind of rhetorics, it really turns me off.
I think to kind of blame God on things like that is dangerous rhetoric. It's not something that should be said. I think you have to sort of sympathize with people who are victims of accidents. So, I agree with you. They shouldn't be saying things like that.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's hop to our next subject, the FISA memo. The FISA memo. I know that this is a topic you don't want to talk that much, but it is a talk of the town, actually talk of the nation. So as a Democrat, how do you feel about this?
Well, I think it's dangerous that they're redacting or changing some of the grammar. Like I was telling you.
Punctuation.
Yeah. When you say no thank you, but you put no, comma, thank you, those are two totally different statements. And they are saying that they're changing some grammatic errors.
Yeah. Typos.
Yes, typos. And typos as yes, but can be changed to no. And that once again
that's not a typo. That's a complete change of word, right?
But I think you're a believer of conspiracy theory.
No, I'm not.
Sometimes.
I'm not. I think many people say this was a conspiracy theory for a year. Okay, it turned out it's not. It's now on the. It's now out in the front. Like. CNN is covering it, ABC, NBC, CBS, they're all covering it, New York Times and Washington Post, all those mainstream media in Washington, D.C. and New York and even L.A. LA Times today, that was front page news. So now it's not a conspiracy theory, it's happening right now, you know what I'm saying? So I'm saying that when the left, the Democrats always say it's some kind of conspiracy theory, it's just because they don't cover it. But you know well that sometimes they don't cover, they omit news that, that should be newsworthy. I think this is a very big news. I told you personally, I think it's much bigger than Watergate, but, but like you have a point, there might be some typos, and go ahead.
And so I think, like I told you before, instead of making speculations, I think we should wait until it comes out. I think the fact that they approved to release it has big implications in the future. The president has till Saturday evening, 6 p.m. Yeah, that's the deadline of 5 days. But also, people have to know that if there's a redaction or changes to it, then it kind of goes back for the approval.
You're right. It has to go back again.
And then that resets the 5-day period once again.
Yeah. So they keep on playing this delaying tactic, you think? It could be happening?
Well, I don't know if it's tactics, but I think it is fair to say if there are changes made, I think they have to look at it before they release it. Okay, so
the most recent report that I've been reading about the FISA memo thing is that there is some typos and some punctuation, but FBI, 5 agents checked that document, the memo, the 4-page memo, and they said the content-wise there is nothing that wrong about it, that there is no big change. It was just grammars and some typos, and that's pretty much it. So there was a report from today, I think it was a Daily Caller. A Daily Caller reported that Trump will release it tomorrow, Friday.
Okay.
So I think it's going to happen. But some people are saying, like you mentioned, since it's redacted and it's revised a little bit, that it has to go through the House Intelligence Committee again, and that's what Adam Schiff has been asking too.
Yes.
Adam Schiff has been so nice. I've interviewed him a couple of times. He came by, Korea Daily, and we talked, and he seemed like a nice guy, but he's just completely far left at this point. I think he's really dead wrong on this FISA memo thing. He's the number 2 guy in the House Intelligence Committee. I think he is dead wrong. Everything he said, I'm against. It doesn't make sense. What he's saying that, he's trying to protect the integrity of the FBI and the people from, knowing this whole thing. I don't think so. I think it should be out in the open because, we need to know, I think. We need to know whether FBI really wiretap, or surveil regular, American citizens, and I think since it's, this sensitive of an issue, it should be out in the public square.
Like I said, I think we should have a further discussion once it comes out. Until then, a lot of it is speculation. I don't agree with you in terms of what Adam Schiff is doing. I think he's just protecting his beliefs and then the people he represents. But once he comes out, I think we can put it to an end, whether this side is right or this side is wrong.
Right, let's do that.
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about the California race, which is also getting heated. So LA Times came out with an article last month, I think you read it, that LA County voters will probably be the deciding factor for the California governor race. 1 in 4 of California's voters live in LA County, and LA County voters has been criticized for many, many years for not showing up to do their duty on election day. But Northern Californians are known to be very active in politics. At this moment, Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom is a one to beat in this race. I know some big-time donors here in Southern California are also helping this race. So former LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa and State Treasurer John Chang of Torrance has to do well in LA County to have at least a shot at this race. I would love to hear your 2 cents on this, since your specialty is in California, politics.
Thank you for kind of giving me the specialty. I think me, as many people who are involved in politics and keep track of this, absolutely those are the three, and there are some other people. And you also have to remember there are a couple of prominent Republicans running.
Yeah.
So if there is a large field of Democrats who are prominent besides the top three, they can divide that, and then a Republican can actually sneak in, because
that's a possibility.
there is a lot of Republicans in the state of California as well. I think one of the things that people are failing to see is that there is a mayoral race in San Francisco.
Because Ed Lee passed away,
correct.
Right? Yeah.
And that's going to, in my opinion, have some bearing on the outcome in the primary, because there is a lot of Asians who live in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I'm not quite sure as to how it's going to really, people will vote of the Asian background, because John Chang is a very well recognized and well known. He's been the treasurer, and before that he was the controller, and before that he was in the Board of Equalization.
Yes,
so
the seat that you're running for.
Yes, and he's well regarded. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, at one time he was the highest vote getter statewide when it comes to one of the races that he ran. So it's not like, I think people dismiss John Chang as the number 3. I don't personally think that he's at far number 3. And yes, for Antonio Villaraigosa and for John Chang, it's going to be decided here in Southern California. But
not for Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom, I think,
because he's northern. Right?
In Southern California, is not really well known, and it's going to be, like we said before, it's going to be north and south. Yeah. But there are a lot of supporters in the north for John Chang.
Okay. When I look at this race, it's not tied up to the presidential election, right? So the turnout.
The midterm, yeah.
It's a midterm. So I think the turnout, if it's low, I don't know whether it's good for John Chang or Antonio Villaraigosa. We're looking at the Southern California point of view, because I think Gavin Newsom is too far left. Personally, I think I like my personal support goes to John Chang. I like John Chang too. I think he's a very moderate Democrat. I think he's very smart. He knows what he's doing. And
absolutely agree on that one.
And so I think for John Chang to have a good chance, I think it really does depend on the LA County Asian voters. I think Asian voters has to come out. How many percentage do you think Asian voters has to show up for him to have a chance?
Well,
because they say 1/3 of LA County voters say they don't know him. I think that's also a negative side on him. So I think that's why Asians really have to be pouring the polling booth.
I think if I were to say 50% over of all Asian voters, then that gives me a big boost for my own race as well.
For you too, right?
Yes.
So John Chang's race, in a way, is kind of a little bit tied up with you too. I see it a little bit that way.
My field is actually exactly the same in terms of demographic. So yes, it will benefit me. But statewide, you're talking about Fiona Ma, another prominent Asian that's going to be on the ballot, and John Chang and myself. Therefore, I believe also Betty Yee, right?
Betty,
isn't the controller going for another term?
Yeah.
So you have some very, very prominent Asians Therefore, Asians have a tendency of coming out more in terms of percentage than other ethnic groups. Therefore, it's going to be very beneficial. And like we have seen historically in the past few cycles, the political world has been sort of surprised at the turnout of Asian. And there have been races where they totally did not expect an Asian to actually fare out as well, and we have. So I think due to the prominence of the candidates that we have, we are going to see a higher number of turnout. But obviously, it's not a presidential year, therefore it's going to be lower. But with that being said, other ethnic groups on the midterm, it's been historically low. So I don't know, the immigration issue may encourage some people to come out because we're looking at 7 congressional races in the state of California that they are Republican and then Democrats want to turn it around. And I think that's also going to have a lot of implications on the midterm election.
So the Hispanic voters, right? So there was a poll that said that Antonio Villaraigosa, his support among the Hispanics are 40%, I think. Isn't that kind of low, 40% among, Hispanics?
Well, Villaraigosa is a very interesting person in terms of likability. And I haven't taken a poll myself, but when I personally ask, it's very polarized.
Among the Hispanic community, you're saying. So it's not like the entire community is just all backing him at this point, right?
Mexican Americans tend to support him, and the rest don't really support him.
It depends on the nationality.
Correct.
As well.
Salvadorians, Nicaraguans, and Central Americans sort of don't really too supportive of him. So, a lot of people talk about how big the Latino community is, and if they were to even come out at 10-15%, probably he'll make the runoff. But we're going to have to see as to how much they come out. So they might be be the casting vote too, the Hispanic votes, right? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, at least they say the race in LA County itself is tighter in the LA County itself. USC Dorn's and LA Times poll conducted late October and early November that Villaraigosa and Newsom is neck and neck, both approximately favored by 27% of the electorate. And Chang landed in a distant third with 15%. So let's see how it goes, And I think John Chang is a formidable candidate, and he can do a come from behind, and make it to the top 2. I think it is a possibility.
June 5th, I'm going to validate some of my beliefs, or is going to actually tell me that what I thought about how people will vote is not correct. And I think, once again, polls, depending on where you do it, how you do it, and then I do have to, you and I are both Asians, and a lot of times they don't speak their mind. And then when you're doing polls,
we're different though.
Yeah, but they don't even participate on polls.
That's a problem.
So maybe they don't have a good sample.
I understand. That is a very good point. You're right. They might not be reflected in this one.
No.
And I've never heard any Asian friends, that said somebody polled me. Have you ever heard in your life? I never heard it. So
I've actually gotten phone calls.
You did?
At home, and sometimes
probably because they knew that you were working in politics.
I'm not quite sure. I think they do it randomly. But I think a lot of people who are Asian, they hear that and then they just hang up or don't really pick up the phone or even take the 5 minutes or so to actually, because they're afraid that they're going to end up in some kind of list that they're going to be asked for donations or continue having these phone calls.
So Ben, do you think if John makes it to the top 2, there's a higher chance for you to land in the top 2? And if he doesn't make the top 2, there's also a higher chance for you to not land in the top 2?
I would have to kind of see it that way as well. And I think there is sort of a positive stereotyping that a lot of people feel that voter equalization, treasurer or controller, Asians do a better job.
Asians do better in the math thing.
And I don't disagree with it.
So the prejudice might be working for your favor, right, on this one,
I
right?
think so, yes. And as well as Betty E. and Fiona Ma.
It is true. We see so many people that came out of there. Prominent Asian politicians like Michelle Park Steele, and also Judy Chu, right? Betty Yee, right? And John Chang, and could be you next time. Right?
Not could be, will be.
Will be. Okay,
yes,
all right.
You.
Will be. We'll correct that. Well, before we go, is there any last words that you want to say? I think you should talk a little bit more about your Board of Equalization race. You know, it's still it's a little bit of an obscure election, so I think you should, you know, since you're here, you know, you should talk more about it. How is it going? You know, who are the formidable candidates?
Thank you.
Who's on your mind?
You know, Board of Equalization is the agency that deals with the state taxes, sales taxes, and it's something that is an afterthought for many people because not too many people deal with Board of Equalization. At the same time, it is a very important agency and is constitutionally elect people to advocate for them. My race, and one of the challenges is that geographically it covers Ventura and Los Angeles County. So it's not your typical race where you have door-to-door or lawn signs of that sort. And a lot of it is got to be done differently. At the same time, we have, although there's about 8 candidates, only about 3 or 4 of them are actually collecting donations and have a traditional campaign. Okay, so you're pretty much saying there are actually 4 traditional candidates, 4 or 5. Yes,
traditional
and the other...
The 4? Would you say 4 or 5?
I say 4.
And the traditional 4,
yes.
Including you, right?
Including myself. And the 4 have their strategy, and we're going to be doing what we need to do. One of the gentlemen who has been running for the past 2.5 years, you know, he's the one who has the most money because he's been running for the past 2.5, 3 years. Myself, I jumped into this race in October, but in a very, very short period of time, I've been able to kind of catch up to him. So I will definitely put up a good fight. Something that most people don't know is that unlike some local elections, even if you get 50% of the entire votes, you don't automatically win when it comes to statewide. So whether it's the governor's race or Board of Equalization, one person can have 51% and the other one has, let's say, 40-something. Both of them still makes it to the runoff in November.
Exactly.
Yes.
Does the Board of Equalization, would they collect recreational marijuana tax as well?
They are involved with it, but there is another department who is actually going to be doing the collection or actually overseeing that. But definitely is they are involved in the whole process, and it's a big, big question. I don't know if you went to the seminar they had a few days ago at the Oxford Hotel.
I read about it.
The room was packed. And I did not expect to see that many people.
Oh, you were there?
I was there, yes. And to see so many Koreans that they were interested in this particular, you know, area of business. So.
What is your opinion on recreational marijuana? Since we're at it, you know, it's legalized this year. What's your take on it?
I never tried it, and I'm not just saying that because I'm running.
Yeah, I know that you know your lifestyle. You don't even drink that much. So,
but the voters approved it. It is coming. You have to deal with it. You have to engage in the conversation. You do have to engage the people who are the leaders of that industry. Otherwise, there's going to be no advancement. I mean, it's here to stay. I believe somebody told me there are 3 areas in the future to make money is real estate, cryptocurrency, and then cannabis in the United States. And, you know, I don't disagree. Those 3 areas seem pretty, they have a lot of things coming up. I mean, look at how we're doing in LA with construction. It's booming and it's becoming unaffordable for a lot of people. But for the real estate people, it's been a very good market, as well as cryptocurrency. Everybody's talking about it. In terms of cannabis, I think even the legislature or even our city government, they have yet to really figure it out how it's going to be done. They're going through the process of giving permits to the people who had the medical marijuana permits, and then now they're giving the recreational marijuana. But look at city of Santa Ana or the city of Adelanto, where they have embraced it, and then it's just thriving. And Colorado is a good example of, depending on your point of view, that the revenue as well as for government has been really good because the tax revenue is flowing. But if you look at it from a law enforcement point of view,
it's not good, right?
They're saying that there's an increase of DUI
accidents.
Yes, and that maybe we need to look deeper into it. That's why I feel that you need to engage it, and a lot of the money that's going to be collected needs to be used on education to make sure that we don't end up in a bad place by legalizing marijuana.
Yeah, I think DUI accidents might increase a lot more than now. I think after like Colorado. So I think that's probably unavoidable. But I want to ask you about how about the federal law? The Attorney General said he's going to crack down on this, right? Jeff Sessions. So I'm wondering how this dynamic is going to play out. How do you predict?
I think everybody's very worried about that because federally, the banks don't recognize it. Therefore, it's still a cash business. We're talking about billions of dollars in cash stashed away in somebody's garage or under the mattress. And I don't know how they're going to, whichever state figures out how to deal with this cash and then comes up with a bank system is going to be a game changer. And I think the federal government, at least under the current Attorney General, is going to pick some unlucky individual who's going to be made an example for people to kind of curb. But as you know, medical marijuana has been legalized in I don't know how many states, I think.
6 states, 6, 7,
16?
Yeah.
No, 16
16,
or 16. And I think it's growing because they kind of recognize the potential on revenue, tax revenue. And I think in due time, the federal government will change it as well, unless you see a total negative side effect of legalizing this. But so far, Nevada, Alaska, and Colorado, those are the three that I can recall where the recreational marijuana has been passed, and then the negative implication is not as bad as what many people thought it was.
Right. And I think City of LA announced yesterday that they're trying to go with this new banking system just for the marijuana business. So probably that might, change the course. Who knows? I mean,
City of Santa Ana, they were interviewing this one shop that in 1 week they collected $60,000 just on tax revenue.
Okay.
$60,000 in 1 week.
And when is your election happening?
My election is June 5th. Of this year.
All right.
Yes.
Well, that's all we have for today. To stay up to date with our latest videos, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking subscribe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.